Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 16th episode of Ocean Classroom Live, the third in a four-part series focusing on what it takes to work in ocean science and exploration. Super cool topic. Hi to our audiences on Facebook and YouTube, and Periscope through Twitter. And as always, thanks to the Devereux Ocean Foundation for its generous support in funding today's episode and the others in the past. So first things first, I'd like to kick things off by asking everybody right in the chat box that you have available to you, where are you watching from? What city, state? Type it in there now and we'll bring it up here and we'll get to kind of go around the table a little bit. And while you're typing in your answers, just a reminder to please follow along to the URI GSO Facebook and YouTube, as well as the ISCs, the Interspace and YouTube too. And you can stay up to date on episodes like this and more to come in the future. And if you're watching after the fact, because we do record these and post these later, still write in your questions because we can follow up with you on the socials, and that could be cool. So today, as you might have noticed, Holly Morin's not here. I'm filling in today, and my name's Alex DeCiccio, and I'm really happy to be here. And today we have two incredible guests that are going to talk about the incredibly exciting work that it takes them to faraway places and on interesting spaces, and that is work on board research vessels. But before we go into that, I just want to talk a little bit about where I'm coming from. So I've got a little bit of experience in science communication, and I've been working in the field for about 10 years. And I've had some really interesting experiences, but one thing that has really shined through is that storytelling, when you're in these spaces, can really be used as a phenomenal tool to help people relate to experiences of others that they may never have experienced in their life. And here's a nice picture of that. This is on board the Captain Burt, which is one of URI's research vessels that actually studies in Narragansett Bay here in Rhode Island. And what's interesting about that is they've actually been running one of the longest data sets in the US, which is the trawl survey. That was what we were recording that day to help communicate about that work. So again, storytelling is just a great tool for us to use. And today we have some pretty awesome storytellers on deck. So I think, let's just go right into it. Let's go right into the interviews. And for someone who I know as a friend who has been working at sea for many years, and we're going to get into it, it's a good friend of mine. Her name is Colleen Peters. And if we can bring her up, hey, Colleen, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing super well. It's super cool to be here with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the experiences that you've had?
Yeah, so I currently work at the Interspace Center with Alex and others, and I'm the operations manager. So I help support our various projects on the research vessels that we support. And I am also a marine technician by trade. I work also on the RV Ocean Explorer for Ocean X, and I just got home from a recent expedition out in the Red Sea. So it's been a crazy year, especially to work on ships, and I don't think I've ever been so thankful to have a career that still continues to allow me to travel in such a difficult time.
It's so cool that you're still so actively involved in it, and that you literally just got off of a ship recently. That's awesome. Thank you, Colleen. So our next guest is Kylie Pasternak. And Kylie, hi, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Kylie Pasternak. I'm a marine technician for URI's research vessel Devereux, which means I help facilitate the science and all the oceanographic technology on the ship. And I'm also a pilot for remote operated vehicles on the Nautilus. So I just got back from a trip doing ROV work off the coast of California in the southern borderlands, studying benthic ecology of the region and collecting samples with all the ROVs.
That's super cool. What are you eating right there? What's in your mouth?
I'm eating a coconut. I'm eating a eraser flavored coconut in Samoa.
That's super cool. So what we want to talk about today is some of the stories. Oh, great. And we're seeing where people are coming in from. Hello to everybody. That's cool. Just keep those rolling in. There's not one way to do this, right? There's a lot of different ways to sort of get into this field and to sort of do the work that kind of draws people to the sea. But I think that's a really interesting place to sort of unpack where we can start this conversation. And Colleen, let's start with you. Maybe you can draw on some of your history here. in your experiences, what initially drew you to working with or at sea?
Yeah, well, so going way back in the archives, I was visiting my father in Florida and would see dolphins and manatees coming up right close to the house because he lived on a canal. And to me, that was really exciting and interesting, and I just wanted to know more. So I started just, investigating, just like any young person does with something that they, sparks an interest with them. But I think that the biggest thing that really drove my interests further ahead was the opportunity to go to a maritime high school. So the Bridgeport Regional Aquaculture Science and Technology Center, which is located in Bridgeport, Connecticut, near where I grew up, provides classes on marine sciences, marine aquaculture, marine technology. So I started working on boats in high school, and I really had the opportunity to really get more in depth with these topics. So by the time I finished high school, I knew I definitely wanted to further study the ocean when I went to college. So I went to school at Maine Maritime Academy because not only was it on the water, but there was also a lot of boats at the school, and I was able to pursue a second program in small vessel operations. So I was able to learn the science and seamanship. And so when I was on an internship on a large oceanographic research vessel during my college years, I was an intern. This is me here on the Seward Johnson, working with the Jason ROV from Woods Hole. This is really where I learned that I could do science and seamanship type things all on the same platform. And in particular, through those experiences, I discovered that I didn't really like writing science papers. I much prefer to know how things work, make them work, and collect good data, and let other folks write those papers.
Smart, in terms of like you knew what your skill set was, how you could contribute, and I think that's super important to know. But quick follow up for you, Colleen, if you've been working on boats since high school, how many days at sea must that be?
A lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like a lot. I have worked on ships full time for probably about 12 years. And, that's an average of 6 to 8 months on board per year. Sometimes more, sometimes less. It just sort of depends on the schedule. So I really haven't managed to keep track, but it's something to the order of, 60 or more science cruises, plus cruises from the other ships I worked on. I worked on cruise ships. I worked on sail training vessels. So the actual number of days at sea is just, it's a lot.
That's so cool. And that's sort of a different tack, and it's a good segue to Kylie. But before we do, I just want to remind the audience, this is interactive, right? So if you have questions for our two guests today, drop them in the chat and we'll bring those up later. And Kylie, as someone who's earlier in their career, kind of just starting out, are you counting the days at sea, but also what drew you there in the first place?
Yeah, I could count the sea on my fingers and toes. I've had more days at sea than that, but this year there's been limited because of COVID and everything. But like Colleen, I'm like really appreciative to have as any time at all. Actually, working at sea is kind of like whenever you get invited onto a vessel, it's almost like getting invited, like as an athlete, as if you could go to the Olympics, because it's like you don't know when it'll happen again. You just gotta be prepared and perform at like when the time calls for it. So I grew up not knowing that there were robots that studied the ocean. I had no idea what ocean technology was. I didn't grow up by the water or sailing, or I've never been diving. But by a fluke one time, I was assigned a project on an invention called the Thomson sounding device. And it was used in the 1870s on a expedition on the USS Tuscarora to do depth soundings in the Pacific. And I was doing my research project and I stumbled across their log from the ship, and they had spooled out like 4,500 meters worth of piano wire off the side of the boat, and they still hadn't met bottom. And I and then, you know, they were getting increasingly deep in not very much distance traveled on the ship. And you could hear their excitement, like in the logbook. They're like, 4,500 meters, 6,000 meters, 8,500 meters. We have run out of piano wire, which is what they were using for the depth soundings, and they still hadn't reached bottom. So they had discovered a trench in the Pacific called the Kamchatka Trench. This was 1874. So I was thinking, you know, how much has our technology developed since then? What have we discovered since then? How can I contribute? Like, what can I do to learn more about the technology that exists? So I started just pursuing different kinds of ways to learn. And a lot of it started at my community college by doing outreach activities with kids. So I could kind of develop like a confidence in myself by teaching other people. And that gave me enough of a background teaching kids like how to build ROVs using PVC and thrusters. It gave me enough of a background and enough of a mentorship network to be able to apply for at-sea internships. So this one was really cool. I got to do a glider technology training camp where they teach you to deploy and ballast and compass calibrate the gliders out of Rutgers University Center for Ocean Observing Leadership. So, I mean, since I had my first experiences at sea with technology, I've kind of like tried to hit the ground running and learn on all facets of like what makes a good technician.
That's so cool. There's something really interesting about what you said there that I wanted to highlight. And I've seen this in my experiences too. It's that when you actually take the time to teach other people, to talk to them about your experiences, that as a technician, you actually gain this confidence. And I think that's something that, you know, is happening more and more in the sciences, that scientists that are coming up now and that are, you know, early, mid, and even late in their careers, they're sort of embracing this idea that when you share your stories from the field, that will, in settings like this, when you provide that opportunity, that it actually has an impact positively for your confidence and how you talk about your work and see your work that way. And I think that's fantastic. High five through the StreamYard for you, Kylie and Colleen. Yeah. So let's see if we have any questions. And sweet. So what skills do you recommend working on? Oh, this is a good one, because I am someone who has gone to sea quite a few times and I'm terrible at knots. And I love that this person pointed out knots, but I know someone here might actually have a good answer for this. Let me think. Colleen, let's try you. Know anything about knots?
They say if you don't know a knot, tie a lot. Don't do that. Please don't do that. I will not endorse that. The most important knot you can learn is a bowline, and that's useful because once it's taken under strain, you can relieve the tension on the knot and release your line. Other than that, you know, there's a whole plethora of knots out there that are quite useful. But you know, I like to tie knots, fancy knots as well. But it really is helpful to know some level of seamanship, no matter which position you're in. You know, if you're in the deck department, obviously you're going to be at a more advanced level. But even as a marine tech, which is what we both do, you know, we're constantly out on deck helping the deck department deploy equipment. So being able to know, you know, at least a foundational knowledge of seamanship is really going to help you help everybody else.
It's a big team effort, and that points to Kylie's point before. Kylie, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm a nervous knotter. I can tie knots by myself, but I really struggle when I am put on the spot to tie a knot. But Colleen's right. You should have some, you know, sense of seamanship for sure. But you can also learn how to secure things to other things using ratchet straps, which I had never used before being on a ship. So ask for a ratchet strap for Christmas and learn how to use it when there's nobody looking at you, and then leave it out all winter and let it rust, and then figure out how to get it unrusty. Those are good technical skills. And there's something to be said for learning how to cut the tail off of a zip tie without getting a knife edge there.
Yes, those can be dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
All of a sudden, Amazon, like, we should get credit for this. Amazon's about to get like a spike in ratchet straps.
Well, it's used to tie down all the science equipment when the scientists don't secure all their equipment. So.
Right.
Yeah. There's one thing I've learned too, that if you're taping something with electrical tape, there's something called leaving a buddy behind, which is that you don't leave it so it's pressed directly on. You actually leave a little tab for the next person who has to remove that, because there's a lot of taping things down with equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the photographer doesn't get in the way of that, but I've been told to always make sure you leave a buddy. So let's take another question. Where can young people access these educational opportunities? And that's great, because the both of you have had such kind of different paths to this. So Kylie, why don't we stick with you on the role here and kind of go from your past experiences, these educational opportunities where you really do learn some of these skills that you need to use in the field.
Yeah, so my academic background is limited to associates from a community college in general engineering. So I've gotten a lot of my work experience from institutions like the MATE Center, the Marine Advanced Technological Education Center, where they offer ROV competitions and they also offer internships. So this is my internship on the Atlantis with the Alvin group, submarine group. And beyond that, I would say there are industry journals that you can subscribe to that can help you identify where you can learn more things. And there are societies like the Marine Technology Society that you can subscribe to as a student, sometimes for free, to help find things that you can engage in. And also the Nautilus has an internship program that they'll invite you. I mean, I was completely green. I had no experience besides being on a ferry. So they let me pilot their ROV without having any prior experience. You know, you just prove yourself and they trust you. They put you in good hands. So they'll teach you what you need to know.
That's amazing, Kylie. Just quickly as a follow-up before we go into Colleen's response, when you say that sort of that idea of trust, I mean, that's something that can be kind of ambiguous for people of like, how do you build that, especially in a ship environment where that stuff kind of needs to happen quickly, right? You're out there on a vessel and you don't really have time to waste around. And I know from my own personal experience, I've always felt when I get on a ship that like I have this nervous energy, like it's time to help everybody. And then there's this like burnout factor that happens. So how do you, in your response, like when you're building this trust and trying to progress your career and your experiences, how do you kind of navigate that? And Colleen, maybe we'll go to you right after.
I've just been so excited to have every opportunity that I've gotten so far to grow and to build, that I think that you just have this, I have to make this count kind of energy, and I have to be useful to them, even if I'm limited in my knowledge and my skills. So it's like doing the dirty work, like just be happy. Where I'm cleaning the grease off of the traction winch at the end of this past season. And you know, I'm in the winch. I got down on my belly under that drum at one point to like elbow grease the grease away. And it's about like bringing whatever skills you can to it. And if you don't have any skills, then find a way to be helpful. And even if that means cleaning, like if they see you giving what you have, they will invite you to learn what they know.
Colleen, as someone with so much experience, you must not be cleaning anymore. That job is underneath you?
No, that's not true. I won't ask anybody to do anything that I haven't done myself. And I will quite often be, you know, cleaning up just because I'm a little bit crazy. But yeah, that's me cleaning off one of the transducers to remove during a dock period.
Wow.
What I wanted to mention is that the unique thing about being a marine technician is that there's no really direct path. There's no specific route to take. We've all come at this from a variety of different directions. But one of the key things that Kylie and I have in common is we were both interns with the MATE program, the Marine Advanced Technology Education Center. And so that's that is like the one very specific program in the country that you get paired up with an existing marine technician on a research vessel and get to learn from them directly. So I've been an intern with them twice on 2 different vessels, and I've also hosted a couple of interns through that program as well. And, it was obviously rewarding as a student, but it was even more rewarding as a mentor, being able to, show someone the ropes, quite literally and figuratively, was really great. And my intern went on to become a marine tech on another research vessel. So, just because, another thing to keep in mind is just because you do an internship in any specific industry or any specific career path, it doesn't mean you have to become that. The idea of internships is to really figure out not just what you want to do, but also what you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's such an important point. I hope everybody in the audience really kind of notes that one down. And also the links of some of these programs, like especially the MATE program, I'm sure they're in the chat now. So be sure to check those out as some actual resources to look and follow up with, to look into. I just want to make a general comment before we go to our next audience question. There's a great sense of that idea of seamanship. I wonder if it's tied to teamwork and to sort of acknowledging that there's a larger operation here. Just as a quick response, is that something that's safe to say? Working at sea.
Yeah, working on a ship is a completely different environment. You're not just working there, you're also living there. You're around people 24/7. You're often sharing a cabin or sharing your office or other lab or workspace, and you're on a watch. So you're required to report for duty from this time to this time, and people are relying on you to do this job. In the office environment, you can kind of show up and you kind of leave, and it more or less may not really affect what other people are doing. But if you're not on watch, people are going to come hunt you down.
They can't get relieved. Yeah.
But you also get no privacy. Some folks are very lucky to have their own cabin, so they might be able to, go sit in a very small room by themselves for a little while and decompress. But you're out there for extended periods of time. You're away from your family and friends back home. And so you have to make the best of the situation and do what you can do to, like Kylie said, be helpful, be useful, and also get along with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's always sleeping on a ship, right? No matter the hour.
Yeah, and on this last expedition, that was me. I was mapping at night, so I was the daytime sleeper, and yeah, we had to sort that out in the first few days.
Nice. Let's see what else we got for questions coming in. This is a great one. I bet you we've all had experiences like this working in this field. So what about volunteering aboard different groups that sort of have different tasks at hand, different missions? So conservation companies, is that a good way to go? Does that open up some sort of interesting doors? And Kylie, what do you think?
I don't have any experience specifically with conservation groups, but I would not say no to any opportunity to figure out what might work for you and your interests. Because there's a lot of intersection in the discipline of working at sea. So you may not like it on a commercial vessel, but you may love it on a conservation vessel. So they're all different environments. They have different objectives. They have different ethos. So expose yourself to all of it so you can get an idea of what the industry is like as a whole, and identify what works for you.
Colleen, what do you think?
Well, when I think of
because you've had such a diverse background.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of conservation companies, I'm thinking of more like the local companies. Like here in Rhode Island, we have Save the Bay and Clean Ocean Access, and those are things that I do when I'm off the ship. Because I get to continue to help the environment in my free time and meet different people. And through some of these networking activities, we've hosted other sort of live classroom events like this, or other sort of educational communications and programs. So you never know who you're going to meet. So definitely seeking any opportunity to get out there and meet people and learn new skills is always very useful. Another thing that's really important with being a marine tech is that you're the liaison between the ship's crew and the science team. So you're having to translate what the scientists want to do into, what does that mean logistically, like, operations wise? What are the challenges, or what's the timing, or, who needs to be where? And so just having as much variety of experience with communicating with different groups is going to help you no matter what career you have.
Oh, I really like this picture, Colleen.
That's us hanging out in the control room on Falcor. The three of us in the foreground are the Marine techs, and we're just having a good time doing a CTD cast.
That's fantastic. There is so much fun to be had out at sea, and that's something that really is coming through from both of your answers, that you're passionate about this work. And while we're waiting for some questions to come in, just to follow up with one, maybe link this to your passion, and maybe there's a story behind it. But if you could imagine a dream cruise, sort of any ship, anywhere, doing anything, using any piece of technology to be part of that team, what would you do? What ship would it be on? Where would you go? And what would you be doing? Kylie, let's start with you. Go ahead, take it on.
There's a private company called Kylie Oceanic, and they own a ship called the DSSV Pressure Drop, and that is home to Victor Vescovo's submarine, The Limiting Factor. And as far as I know, it's the only submarine rated for full ocean depth for multiple dives. And they have this expedition called the 5 Deeps expedition, where they want to go to the 5 deepest places on Earth. And I would love to join them to go to like the Marianas Trench. And even if I couldn't get in the submarine, because those seats are so coveted for those dives, even just to learn about their launch and recovery operations. And they have these landers that they use to collect data and transfer it between the sub optically. I want to get hands on that tech, man. That sounds like a lot of fun to me.
That's super cool. So, okay, Victor Vescovo, if you're listening, Kylie's ready. Kylie's ready.
Call me.
Colleen, what about you? Dream project.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard for me to think about a dream project because my brain is just too logical. My passion is really just making things work. So like, I function better if somebody else has a vision. They tell me what the vision is, and I make the thing happen. I'm much more of an operations type person. So I really have a hard time thinking of a dream cruise or dream technology, but I have had a few favorite cruises, if that's of an interest. So my top 3 cruises are the Index Satal expedition on the nose ship Okeanos Explorer. Was a really remarkable expedition where we went to Indonesia and worked with another Indonesian vessel to study and explore, explore an area of the region of North Sulawesi, and it was absolutely spectacular experience. Not only did we do some groundbreaking exploration, we brought the vision of the seafloor with mapping and ROV video to people who have never seen what really lives beneath their surface. But we built some really, really great relationships with the folks over there. The second one was a cruise off of Fiji and Tonga on the RV Falcor. We were doing some explorations in the Lau Basin, and we had some weather days where we were not really able to deploy the ROV where we planned, and a lot of that area had already been mapped, so it seemed like more useful for us to go do a little bit of a side project, which we ended up mapping a volcano in Tonga. So that was a freshly erupted volcano that had appeared above the surface, and we got to map what was below the surface around the volcano. And so that was absolutely a highlight of my career. And then also the third one would be the expedition I just did on the Ocean Explorer. I can't go into too much detail about the expedition, but you can follow along to some stories and videos provided by OceanX on their social channels.
That is so cool. It just goes to show, like, exploration is this great sort of filter to experience the world through. Like these are all different
parts of the
pathway
world too.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's different, really vastly different parts of the world. And that is, to me, one of the highlights of working on a research vessel is you get to go to these really unique, far away, less accessible places, you know, that a lot of tourists don't necessarily go to.
Yeah, that's been a really special part of this. And I hope that's coming through to people. Like if you want to get out there and go to these places that other people just don't see and have these experiences, go after it. All right, so speaking of going after it, I think we'll take one more question. Let's throw it up here and we'll go from there. So Jackson says, as a junior undergraduate mechanical engineer, what opportunities should I be looking for to get started on working on a boat for limited amounts of time? So someone who's not ready necessarily to make the entire commitment of spending weeks or months at sea, but sort of getting a taste to see if that really is something they want to commit to. Kylie, what do you think from your point? Well,
sorry,
actually,
I have
Kylie,
a bad connection.
Oh, all good. We're starting to hear you now. Do you want to take it? Colleen, let's switch to you.
Yeah, I'm not about the entire question. I know that there are.
All right, well, Kylie's still buffering. This is good. This is modern comms. Colleen, what do you think? Someone who's, just to remind you of the question, somebody who's just trying to get started out, just get a taste into the industry.
Yeah.
Kylie, maybe you can put your comment in the chat.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would recommend is looking at the Nautilus internship program, because they have internship programs for science, communications, video engineering, as well as ROV. And I think that could be the best mechanism to go in and get a taste and see what you think of working in that environment, to see if you want to pursue any future studies. So they typically will open up their internships right about now-ish, right around December, I believe. If you look at oceanexplorationtrust.org, they have, which I think we'll be providing links at the end, they will post their internships when they're open, and there's usually a deadline to apply, and then they'll select students to join them on the following year's expeditions.
That's awesome. Kylie, you're definitely back with us. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm back. I agree with Colleen, and I think that it's as much as at-sea experience is really good, it's really great to also build your skill set for what you can, because when you're at sea, you're limited to the personnel, the equipment you have, and the skills of the personnel. So if you can develop your machining abilities, if you have access to it, definitely there's almost always like a lathe on a ship in case something breaks that you need to make without going back into port. So if you can develop those skills as well as the theory behind it, that's a really good way to supplement your assets.
Oh, that's a great point. It's sort of a different point of access to sort of contribute and to help out the team. Oh, that's fantastic. So I think with that, we'll sort of round it out and just thank the both of you for making some time to talk to us in the audience today about these experiences and to share your stories of like what it takes to kind of do this stuff, because it might seem so far-fetched to actually establish a career at sea, but you're looking at two really good examples and you just heard two really interesting points of view of how that can be done. And especially check out those links in the chat. So that being said, thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Kylie, for your time, and see you later.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for taking the time. Oh, that's a great point. Learn by doing. That's a good, that's from a project that I was part of. It's a storytelling project in the Solomon Islands. But, you know, speaking of that, learning by doing, these are opportunities that are just like this, where we can really, we can get a sense to listen to people's stories. We can process that information and then use that in our lives, right? So again, I just wanted to thank the Devereux Ocean Foundation for their support, and to thank all of you for coming in today and dropping some questions in, actually being part of this conversation. Check out the various websites and the links that were posted in the chat, and you can come back to them after, because again, we record these and post these later on. And remember, this is the third of a 4-part series. So there's still one more to go in this Framing Your Future series. And again, it's about exploring ocean careers and the different ways that that can happen, just like we heard today. the 4th episode, and it's going to be the last of 2020. So make sure to check it out. This has been so much fun to be part of this Ocean Classroom series. The 4th episode is going to take place sort of after, once you get into the career, what do you do next? And that's going to be on December 17th at 12 p.m. Eastern. And with that, remember to follow along on the socials that you see here, but on Facebook, on YouTube for the URI, GSO, and ISC. And it's really been an honor talking with you all today and talking with Colleen and Kylie. I just want to say see you later next time.